Are you overwhelmed with student loan debt and considering fleeing the U.S. to escape your student loans? Well, keep watching. The other day, I was reading an article on the MSN's website where they were talking about Americans are fleeing the U.S. to escape their student loans. And I could not even believe it. In the article, they had 3 individuals that had fled the U.S. to escape their student loans, and they were just giving us a little background. Have you ever considered fleeing to escape your student loans? Hit that like button and tell me, where would you flee to? You guys know I just got back about 2 weeks ago from St. Croix. I had an amazing time. And I don't know that I could consider myself fleeing there because it is within the U.S. Virgin Islands. So I guess they maybe could still catch me if I fled to St. Croix. They maybe would still be able in jurisdiction to get my wages. So maybe that won't be a good idea. But there were a lot of Americans at some of the restaurants that we went to. And they were, one lady, she was from California and she just wanted a change, and she had been there maybe like 6 months. When we went on our catamaran tour, one of the instructors, he and his wife had been there, I think maybe 4 years or so. I can't remember exactly, but I think they were from Colorado, and they just wanted a change, and they went to St. Croix. So people do it. In the article that I was reading, it was talking about a young man. He was 29 years old, and he had about, I would say, $29,000 in student loans. It might not even been 20. It might have been only $20,000 in student loans. And he was actually from Colorado. And when he graduated, he was having a hard time finding a job. And he was still living at home with his mom. The job that he did end up getting, I think he was only making less than $2,000 a month. And he wasn't even going out a lot, but he still didn't have enough money to pay his student loans and have money for himself. So I guess he conjured up this idea to move to India. So he ended up moving to India, where he has a concrete apartment, and he pays about $50 a month to live there. And I think also in the article it did say that he ended up marrying an Indian woman, and they lived there. So he was able to find love, which is a good idea, but I don't know that I would want to flee the United States for that. He says that his life is pretty good living in India with he and his wife. Would you want to do that? I mean, I don't know. I don't think that it's in my mind, fleeing the U.S. for $20K in student loans. How many of you guys, if you woke up with $20K in student loans, would be happy? Hit that like button. In the article, it also states that the average person graduating with student loan debt is about $30,000. Well, also, in my mind, that's not really a lot. I have probably double that, and I still feel like it doesn't seem like so enormous to me, but I guess I can see where they're coming from. But I think you just have to possibly change your outlook about it. All 3 of the individuals in the article was stating that once they graduated with a degree, they were, and I know that the first guy, I'm assuming, I'll have to read the article again, and I'll put the article below so that you guys can read the article for yourselves. But I'm assuming that these individuals actually graduated with a degree. And it wasn't in this article, but I've read that the average income for a person with a bachelor's degree is about $35,000 to possibly $45,000. So, you know, having $20,000 to $30,000 in student loan debt, and then coming out and only making $35,000 to $45,000. I mean, you can do the math. You know, you invested your time in school, and so you really want to get a return on your investment. So coming out of school and only making $35,000 to $45,000, and you have, you know, if it's on average 30,000, and for instance, Chad, he only had 20,000, you might feel like you're not really getting a return on your investment. But is that still enough for you to flee the U.S. to escape those student loans? You let me know. So reading the article a little bit more, the second gentleman, he was about 39 years old, and he had about 30,000 in student loan debt. The third young lady, she had a friend that moved to China, and she was working like a host of jobs, and still she didn't have health insurance, and I think she might have been living with her mom. And so she just thought it would be a good idea to go on and move to China with a friend of hers. But she is actually considering coming back. You know, it is a thought in her mind. But as she thinks that they're going to probably garnish her wages when she comes back. And then if she hasn't been paying her student loans, I'm pretty sure that her credit score is shot. So then that's going to make it hard for her, one, to get an apartment, because they're probably going to be checking your credit and your credit score is going to be low. And then two, you know, once you do get a job over here, they're going to start garnishing your wages, and you might have to end up staying with a friend or a family member. So even if you come back, your quality of life is still going to be bad. So I suggest, I'm going to give you a couple of tips on maybe what I would consider doing so that you don't necessarily have to flee the U.S. And also why I think it's not necessarily a good idea. Now, we all know when we were in college, I'm pretty sure most of us, did your parents sign a Parent Plus loan, or did they co-sign for you to have a loan? Now, we know that they're federal and there are private loans. So if you flee the U.S. to escape your student loans, those student loans don't just leave because you leave. Next is going to go to the person who co-signed for those loans. So do you want to push that burden that you had on yourself to the people that you love? So let's say your mom or your dad or a sibling. Would you want to put that, you wasn't able to make that student loan payment, now you're going to put that on a family member? That would not be right for you to do that. So I would say you might want to think twice about doing that. I have heard where people have even passed away and that student loan is not able to be forgiven. And it's also, you know, like if your mom or somebody else co-sign for that, it's going to go to them. So you cannot escape your student loans. So in those instances, you do want to make sure that you have the appropriate amount of life insurance or money set aside to where, you know, if something like that was to happen, that you still would not put that burden on, you know, somebody that you love. The next reason, how is that going to impact your credit score? So if you flee for a couple years and you come back, what kind of quality of life are you going to have when you come back, when you try to apply for a job, or if you try to apply for an apartment? Your credit score is going to be so shot that even when you come back, it's going to make your quality of life probably even worse than when you left. So you just want to make sure that you try to figure out some tips on paying that student loan off. So one thing that I might suggest, and something that I did a few years back, is possibly see about consolidating those loans. Now, I have my bachelor's and I have a master's degree. And once I had finished my master's, a few years after that, I was, you know, because it ended up being two different loans. And the payment, you know, ended up being kind of high. And so what I did, I called up one of my servicers and I got them to consolidate the two loans. And it actually brought my payment down a little bit more to where it was a little reasonable for me to make the monthly payment. And also, especially with the federal loans, they're usually a little bit more forgiving. So as long as you're making sure that you're communicating with them and not avoiding their calls, or if they're sending you mail, as long as you're not avoiding them and you're trying to communicate with them, usually they will kind of work with you compared to the private loans. Now with those private loans, woo, they don't offer you hardly any assistance. So I would say if you have, younger siblings or cousins or, other people maybe in your church, younger people that I would say make sure to tell them do not get those private loans, because when you get out and if you need some assistance, they will not really help you out with that, and it will definitely impact your credit score. Also, there are companies that actually do student loan repayments. Now, we've all heard of companies helping you. Let's say you want to go back to school and they have the tuition reimbursement to help you, but what about the student loan reimbursement? Now, I went online and there are several companies. Put the website below where I found this, or you can just Google companies that do student loan reimbursement. And what I found was there are some companies that'll pay about $100 to $150 per month. Now there are some stipulations to that. I know one company, they'll pay $100 per month up to, I want to say 7 years. And I think that equals maybe about $9,000 or so. So just take a look at that. That might be something you'll be interested in, because once you're making your payment and you're good, in a good standing with your student loans, then they'll come around and put $100 to $150 towards your student loan, and that can really decrease that student loan pretty quick. So you might want to take a look at overall fleeing the U.S. to escape your student loans. I mean, it could be a good idea or not. For me, I would not suggest fleeing the U.S. to escape your student loans. Just consider consolidating your student loans and or calling them to do an income-based student loan and doing a budget to see how you can reallocate your funds to actually maybe pay a little bit more on your student loan. You could do that debt snowball, and let's say you might have some credit card debt on top of that student loans. See about paying those credit card debts off first, and then after you pay those student loans off, after you pay those credit cards off, then use that money on your student loans, and then that's how you can pay your student loans off faster. As well, if you're looking for a new job, go on that website and see, which companies are actually doing that student loan repayment plan for their employees. Check that out and see that might be of some benefit to you. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Let me know, have you ever considered fleeing? What are your thoughts about your student loans? Thanks for watching.